Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to be clear. I like natural gas juxtaposed to what we're discussing on the floor, which I think is a dirtier source of fuel. And I definitely like exports. But I like something even better than those two. I like cheap domestic sources of energy. So I think part of this discussion is how we ensure that we're going to make sure that the U.S. economy takes best advantage of this. So I have a bunch of different questions, and maybe I can just queue it all up and you guys can go from there. But Mr. Durbin, if you could just talk a little bit about the domestic natural gas markets and some of the other uses that are going to come into the picture, like, you know, heavy-duty fleet trucks and the potential for the maritime industry. We're very, very excited about the transition of the maritime industry to natural gas as a fuel source, again, to comply with environmental issues in places like LA, Long Beach, and all up and down the coast. Okay, so how do we get that right? Mr. Cicero, what price point impacts your business? During the Enron crisis, and again, those were very exaggerated rates, but you know, the aluminum industry and several other mineral industries just had no choice. The price fluctuation came, and guess what? Those factories shut down forever. So these long-term contracts get locked in on export at very, you know, say a preferential rate for, you know, a long period of time because of the nature of those contracts. And then the domestic market sees this fluctuation based on that international market, not locked into long-term contracts. What price point do you start worrying about the impact to industry? My guess is it's a lot narrower than people might imagine. And then the door's shut and the factory's not open again. And it's not like you turn the lights back on. This is what we saw in the Northwest. Aluminum plants shut down forever and ever, okay? So this is very important to Midwest industry issues. And then the third point is, Mr. Smith, I just don't know what happens when you get this list and you say, okay, all right, here we are and we're not done. Denied. Okay, so is that denied like now you're back at the bottom of 100 permit list, or denied and like maybe in 2 years I'll think about you again? So my question is, I think the denial part of this legislation is, you know, a good idea in concept, but I think what it might actually mean on projects that really shouldn't be denied is an interesting question. I wonder if you have a process. So as quickly as people can answer that, that'd be appreciated.
Senator, if I could just start with where the markets are, you know, for natural gas going forward, and it's fairly clear. EIA has some very good projections on what they think the demand increase will be in these areas. We think there may be some additional opportunities as an industry, but nonetheless, first is power generation. I don't think there's any question we're going to continue to see natural gas grow in the power generation market. Second is the industrial and manufacturing, and again, petrochemicals is going to be a huge part of that, not only because of the dry gas itself, but because of the natural gas liquids that we're producing, and that's been increasing there. You know, third is in transportation. It's over the road, rail, marine. I will tell you that even if we're wildly successful there, it barely moves the needle as far as demand goes. We're all for it. We're pushing for it. We want to see it happen everywhere we can. But that's not a huge demand draw. And then exports, of course.
Okay, Mr. Cicero, on the price.
My energy-intensive consumers consume about 75% of all the natural gas of the entire manufacturing sector. And their operating costs range from about 20% energy to as much as 80% of the cost of making anything from plastics, chemicals, to fertilizer, cement, steel, aluminum, plastic, glass. There's two parts to that answer to that question. There's no specific price point, but first on the table is the fact that natural gas is subsidized and regulated in so many countries across the world that is kept at a low price. For example, China may buy, last year they bought LNG at $16. But they were providing that gas to their non-residential consumers, manufacturers, at $1.78. All right? So when we come to this issue, we are looking not short-term, we're looking long-term, because the fact is there are uncertainties, okay, in the domestic market in terms of what price point can producers produce gas, okay, that can impact investments. No one forecasted the price drop of crude oil. That was a surprise. That's impacting investment in oil and gas going forward. That will impact the supply. No one forecasted it. So we can't answer that question, what is the price point, but what we do know is from 2000 to 2008, the price of natural gas increased by over 200% in the United States. And then that was over a 20% increase per year. And over that time frame, we lost 44,000 manufacturing facilities. Now, those plants shut down were not entirely because of energy, but I have those types of companies, and they were a major part of the plant shutdowns.
Thank you. Maybe Mr. Smith could get us a longer answer. I mean, more, that's a pretty big question. I mean, our time is over, but we can either get a short answer and a longer written answer, however, Madam Chair, you want to proceed. Very quickly.
I give a quick answer. I think it's important to emphasize that when we look at each one of these applicants, we are looking at each of these applicants on a case-by-case basis. Each of the orders is a long, detailed document that we've endeavored to write in good, clear, common sense English that has to address all of the points that are made by the interveners in each of the cases. So we've got very varied comments, some strongly pro, some strongly against. And depending on the comments that we get, we have to address each of those comments and make our public interest determination based on a variety of factors. So what we would do subsequently to that would depend on the individual case. So there's not a rubber stamp, there's not a particular answer that comes out of a spreadsheet. It would depend on the case.
Thank you.